Hey there, my name is Rachel Killackey, and welcome to the Magdala Podcast. We at Magdala know from experience that pornography, masturbation, and other sexual addictions are not just a guy problem. The need for women to be accompanied in a journey towards healing from addiction has gone sorely unmet, and that's why we're here. Magdala exists as a space where women can find hope, healing, and freedom alongside each other from sexual addiction. Our goal is to supply you with support, community, and accountability. Here on the podcast, you'll find everything from testimonies to practical advice to dialogue about how to heal and live fully as a Catholic woman. Wherever you are in your journey, know that you're not alone, and we welcome you to this table. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Magdala Podcast. We took a brief break last week. We were supposed to post last week, I think it was, for Christmas and New Year's, but we're back with an episode that I've been super excited to record. We've tried a few times, but got a little too intense, so we've taken a bit of a step back and a different approach, and we're hoping this one works. But tonight I have my husband, Tommy, on with me. Say hello, Tommy.
Hi, everybody.
To the big wide web. Tommy is obviously my favorite guest I've ever had because he's my favorite person in the world. So anyway,
that's kind of sweet, Rachel, for a podcast.
That's like a lot.
Yeah, that's
it's a lot.
personal.
We can edit it out. It's fine.
But what if they find out about our, we must hide because our love is known?
Oh my gosh. No. Anyway, I have my stop. Well, yes, I have my husband. I have my husband Tommy on.
She's
tonight,
blushing.
Who never? Yeah. No. Stop. We're gonna have to stop and record again.
Okay, can keep going.
Yeah, okay. But we're going to talk about social media tonight. So Tommy and I have been social media free for I've been social media free for 4 years, maybe.
Wow. Yeah.
I've had off and on, so I can't, maybe it's 3. I can't really keep track of, because I had deleted some and then deleted others and all sorts of things. Anyway, but you've been completely social media free for
about a year. Yeah, about a year.
You were mostly social media free when I met you.
I was mostly social media free for a long time.
And then Facebook was the last.
But Facebook was the last thing where I just had it. And we'll get into that later. But I've just couldn't get rid of it where it's I don't, gauging, justifying keeping it because I only checked it once a month, which was true. I hardly checked it.
Yeah. No,
but it was still there. And anyway.
That is in point.
Section 3.5,
number 3,
bullet point A, period, with the half.
So the first time that we tried to record this episode, I want everybody to know we got way too intense and interrupted each other and sounded really angry. And I was listening back to the episode. We weren't angry at each other.
I think what it sounded like could very well have been what you just described. What happened is I think we just got very excited, it's just lots of points.
Bourbon.
It was a good idea, probably poor execution. Where a bourbon and a half, drink and a half of bourbon. I'm not drinking bourbon. That sounded like anyway.
Bourbon.
But I think there's a sense of Anyway, there's a lot of things you get excited about, and we can not you as in generic, not you specifically, and that And then, anyway, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm stringing along my thoughts. What
are you trying to say?
Just that I think it was good to stop and be okay, lots of points, and these are good things, but we'll be a bit more organized and systematic, not in a stiff way, but just in a way where it's digestible, I guess.
Well, yeah,
because for our sake, if more than anything,
We rant about social media regularly. So I think what ended up happening was a bunch of prepackaged rants
came out
at the same time
with overlapping.
These do not go well together. So we have organized tonight 5 ways social media feeds addiction. So we're going to speak again. We have many prepackaged rants. We're going to speak specifically to how social media feeds, pun intended, how social media feeds addiction. I came up with that pun and I'm very proud of it.
She did.
Thank you. But yeah, we're just gonna condense kind of some of our thoughts and observations on social media into just points that relate to addiction, specifically addiction to pornography and lust and sexual sin in general. So
let's get after it.
Let's hop to it. Anyway,
I think for the rest of the episode, never mind. I'm not gonna. I often do this thing where I start doing an accent, and then they're like, "Wait, is that Scottish or is that Australian?" Like, and I'm like,
do I know?
I don't know. Or it morphs like how at the beginning of the sentence it was kind of more Australian, and the end of the sentence is more like a crass kind of guttural Scottish.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh my word. Okay. It's because we were listening to Loch Lomond earlier. Okay. Also, disclaimer: we've both had COVID in the past couple of weeks, so.
Please wear a double mask when you're listening to this episode.
Oh my gosh. The residual cough might make an appearance. We'll just put it that way. Point number 1 is social media acts as access for pornography. So I talk about this regularly, and this is our first point just because it's probably the most obvious. But many people's first exposures comes through social media. Mine came through Pinterest. Many people comes through Instagram. Now TikTok. TikTok is on a whole different level. Like, don't even get me started on TikTok. But a lot of people are exposed to pornography through social media, either through somebody's personal post. There are pornographic pages on Instagram, like there are like pages intended to be pornographic. But there's a lot of written and visual pornography on platforms like Facebook or Pinterest or others. But what social media also does is it creates kind of, I don't want to say gateway. It bypasses a lot of filtering systems. So, one of my friends in high school, for instance, was he was male, but he was really struggling with addiction, and he got Covenant Eyes and whatnot, and bypassed a lot of. And I think they've updated since, but he bypassed a lot of filtering to access Twitter, and through accessing Twitter, and then found pornography through Twitter. So it couldn't track it if it was through social media, and wouldn't flag it. So it's things like that where pornography appears regularly on these platforms, but social media platforms can also act as a way to bypass filtering systems or not be tracked by filtering systems. And when you look at the ethical side of things, of like this has been brought to the attention of like corporate when it comes to like Facebook and Instagram and whatnot. Like it's been brought to their attention that they host pornography and they haven't done a thing about it. So there's plenty of studies out there done on this. Like they think that part of being an adult on their platform is having the ability to access and use pornography, but they don't do anything even with the knowledge of like the fact that thousands upon thousands of children and minors are using their platforms as well. I
think also that like it's not like it's an easy textbook mistake to assume, people access pornography because they go on their computer, they go on google.com and they put in pornhub.com and then hit search and then click on Pornhub, whatever. Like, and that it's like, and that does happen, of course, but that like there's I guess this point is just saying the obvious that pornography is everywhere, and that it's not just simply searching for the explicit websites. It can be found anywhere. And I think another danger of social media is that like Google's purpose is to lead you to something else. With just the purpose of search engine. But like when you're on social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or something else, like you feel like you're in a sense at a destination. You've arrived. You're inside one particular platform. But there still is a sense of you can search anything at any time in basically every social media. I guess maybe not Snapchat. Well, yeah, anyway, but the point being is that like you can feel like, okay, I'm here and I can stay here as long as I want, but then like you almost feel like you're not. There's a layer of what's the word? Like less explicit in the sense, whereas Google, if you search for an explicit thing, you know what you're doing. But like on social media, it feels like, oh, I'm just on Facebook or whatever the platform may be, accessing bad things in that regard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think too. I dropped a book. I think on top of it, and I think this will bleed into point number 3 that we'll get into in a little bit. But social media typically requires having a smartphone of some capacity. Like a lot of people can still just access through their computer. But I can't stress enough that like having a smartphone as a porn addict is akin to having a beer in your back pocket as an alcoholic. Like you have 24/7 access to the thing you're addicted to sitting in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing you typically pull your phone out for is social media, other than texting and the regular uses of a phone. But when you see people just sitting and filling their time with social media, it kind of leads you to believe that it's the number one thing they use their phone for.
Yeah.
But social media also keeps a smartphone in your hand. So that's a whole different link that I'll probably get to in a different point. But it's the same as like having the substance that you're addicted to constantly in your back pocket.
Yeah.
It's like that stupid line from Fault in Our Stars. So what was the stupid line? Like, yeah, you put the...
it's like he's got the cigarette.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Oh, I'm so mad. I thought you were a great guy." I don't know the exact. I'm butchering it already, but it's just like she's like, "Thought you were a great guy," and then he looks at her all like suave. He's like, "No, babe, that's just a thing, you know." And he's like, God. "I put the thing that's got the power to kill me in my hands, and I don't give it the power to kill me," or something. Where he's like, he's got a cigarette, but he never lights the cigarette. It's like, ooh, this deep. Sorry, I'm probably like, poking a lot of fun at that's maybe a lot of you like Fault in Our Stars.
It's a book about cancer.
I just thought that was just the cheesiest thing.
but it is. I think a lot of people think that though is like I can be a porn addict and have a smartphone in my back pocket and it's totally fine.
I mean, I can. Well, it says the alcoholic. I could quit alcohol anytime I want to.
Yeah, but I'm still gonna go to the bar. It's totally fine. But that's the point. It makes you keep the substance around all the time because of social media. Anywho, point number 2. Do we feel like that was covered sufficiently?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty straightforward.
That one's pretty straightforward. I was kind of stumbling.
Porn's everywhere, including social media. It's another portal to find porn. So
it is one of the.
If you're not on social media, it's another one less door closed.
Exactly.
One more door closed.
One less. Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
That makes sense. Yes.
Okay. Number 2 is social media numbs you. I'll say that again. So number 2 is social media numbs you or monotonizes things. So this is kind of your point. So you take it away.
Well, I wouldn't say it's my point. It's a point that I understand from several other people smarter than I. But
Mark Barnes.
That's yeah. But I guess I can start there. But Mark Barnes was actually the gentleman who had a point of distinguishing between the book and the screen. It's easy to think. I can go, there's no need to flesh that out in its full depth, but the point to take away basically is that the means matters, like how you understand or see something matters. And a book is an object that doesn't change. It's printed and then that's it. That's what you got. And you pick it up, you put it down, you read it, you don't read it. The typo's there, it's going to stay there, whatever it may be. But screens, they instead are these things that actually depend on a great many things constantly that we don't necessarily think about. So they require electricity, they require Wi-Fi, they require a computer that's functioning. There's like all these different things that are behind the scenes that seem like just given, and it's a funny thing with technology where. It's invisible when it's working, but as soon as it starts malfunctioning, it gets so frustrated. Oh my gosh, the Wi-Fi is not connecting. Oh my goodness, my computer died. Oh my goodness, why is Facebook down? Or it's like the most scandalous thing for us, or it's so frustrating. But the big thing is that, so without getting, I guess, into like the malleability, I guess, the changeability of the screen, how the screen constantly can change. And so it, but what it does though is that the screen is something that it kind of monotonizes or just it kind of blends many things together as the same. And it's kind of like a subconscious hypnosis almost, where it's like it all becomes a bit of the same. And so for instance, like one point he made was just like, that revolution happening in the Middle East, or that nude woman, or that tornado that happened in Kentucky, or whatever, that riot going down there, that there's or that cat meme, that this, like all these different things that have a wildly different I guess essence, or I guess severity or importance even. It's like that cat meme should be nothing but a giggle, and not important whatsoever. And it's not a bad thing per se, but like if you see the cat and then you scroll and then, okay, wow, revolution, 3 people died in like, Iraq. Oh, that's really sad. Scroll. Okay, now there's this like explicit image. Okay, whatever. Scroll. Like, and it just kind of like scroll and scroll and scroll, and it makes us numb essentially, and it desensitizes us to what we see on the screen because, again, if you pick up a book that's pornographic, you know what you're doing, and there's at least a layer of honesty, despite the fact it's still just as guilty, so to speak.
Right.
But in the same thing with picking up a hard newspaper about what's going on in the Middle East or something as a news thing, But the screen is this like malleable, ever-changing thing where you scroll, and it all dumps into the same pot, literally, like the same feed. And it makes us kind of begin to subconsciously lump them together in our brains as all the same. And so the reason that's dangerous, obviously, is that, you stop thinking like, wow, okay, like I'm being hypothetical here, but like 3 people died in X country, whatever, like that's horrible. Like and our hearts are meant to mourn or to
at least pause.
Or, I talked to one person a while ago and, they were saying that like, the truth is, I'm disturbed by disturbing things. And it's like, yeah, that's a good thing. Like disturbing things should disturb us.
Right.
And when they don't, that's not this like proud callous you have. That's a sad numbness you are afflicted to. And the same goes with violence, with, lust and pornography and explicit things. And the same goes with even just, politics or memes, or it all just kind of lumps together and it makes us just consumers.
Yeah. And I think too, part of that, like you said, is I guess the volume of consumption has a lot to do with it, because I think the quality of what we're consuming and the volume at which we're consuming it is what really ends up monotonizing things. Like if you think about like BuzzFeed, right? Like I hate BuzzFeed, but I find myself on it constantly. Why am I on BuzzFeed, right? And like the way BuzzFeed talks about sexuality, the way BuzzFeed talks about relationships, the way BuzzFeed talks about so many different things I hate, right? Why do I find myself on it? But I think it's that way with multiple things, social media included, with social media being the first, where it's like, oh, it's fine because I find recipes on BuzzFeed. I find funny quizzes. I find, and it's the poop and the brownie analogy that I think of. Like, when are we gonna stop eating the brownie that has a little poop in it, but I think it's that argument of like the more I expose myself to content that I know is wrong, but I accept it anyway just to continue doing whatever the hell I want to do, like the more and more friendly I become to that content, whether or not I want to be.
Yeah.
So that's where it really ends up connecting to pornography, is like social media builds that habit of volume of consumption, sometimes lack of quality too.
Yeah.
Like I mean, there are people who like try to only follow, quote unquote good accounts, right? Or like Catholic accounts or something. And like obviously the quality of consumption you're going to get from something like that is much better than BuzzFeed. I'm definitely not like knocking that, but at least the volume there numbs you to encountering other things.
Yeah.
For certain.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point of just social media and many things in the same category where there's always going to be redeeming factors. And so it's in one sense, it's definitely important to recognize those redeeming qualities and to affirm them. And it's like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like the value of being updated, or the value of trying to keep up with your friends. We don't need to get into that. Or the value of like some helpful tips, perhaps. Like you follow this account that has cool videos to help you like with a hobby or whatever. It's like all hypothetical things. And that's all great. But the thing is that like you have to also take it with a grain of salt. Where it's like certain things always have redeeming qualities that then make you intentionally blindside to the things are not good.
Yes.
And so I think social media is one of those where like no one necessarily even wants to talk about the fact like, yeah, you can find bad accounts or explicit things on it but I'm on it because of X,
Yeah.
And then you don't want to talk about Y.
Sorry,
Y is in the letter Y. That's confusing.
You don't want to talk about Z.
X, Y, or Z. Yeah.
I think this bleeds, voice crack. I think this bleeds really well into our third point. So social media, this is number 3. Social media convinces you that you need it. So I think what you just said relates a lot to this. But when I tell women to delete their social media if they're addicted to pornography, the excuses I get are, I have never heard a good one. This one actually does make me mad. It's like, at this point I have to just laugh. I'm like, okay, what are they gonna hit me with this time? Like, what is it going to be? Because I've heard I need to stay connected to friends and family. I've heard I need it for work. I mean, what else do you need?
I need cat memes.
No, I have heard somebody say that they need their meme reels. I'm not kidding. Like, that's been an excuse. So like, I think there's a ton of like just horse shit excuses, to be honest. But, and this is the point where I get mad. But like, because they're excuses anyway. Or okay, I'm gonna relate this back for a second.
It's like poop with a little bit of brownie on it.
Oh my gosh.
But there's brownie.
But there's just a tiny bit of brownie. Okay, regroup. So a few weeks ago, you talked about technology at youth group, right? So for clarification, Tommy's having a cough moment. Tommy is a youth minister, so he's the director of youth ministry at a parish in Franklin, Tennessee. But a few weeks ago, you spoke about technology to the teens. Mm-hmm. And I was running the girls' small group afterward. We talked about technology and distancing from it and all sorts of things. And I asked the question, I was like, what is a goal you can set to limit your technology use this week? We were talking specifically about social media. We weren't we had gone beyond just pure technology. It's like, what's a goal you can set to limit your use? Not get rid of your accounts, but just limit your use. And each one of them, instead of setting a goal, gave an excuse. And so it came back to me and I was like, all right, I just heard a bunch of excuses. Let's try again, because addicts make excuses. So we're going to set goals this time. And then they went around and set goals. But I think the fact that the first thing people do when talking about social media is make an excuse, like, tells you that it is pulling at people in a way that is completely, like, I don't know, malicious, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, there's also, I mean, there's not social media, but smartphones. Like, there's like some really eye-opening statistics.
Yeah.
Maybe not statistics, I guess facts or
facts.
What's the word? Study results, I guess you could
Findings?
say. Findings. There you go.
Findings.
Yeah. Findings. That, 33% of millennials said they'd rather have their right hand cut off than lose their smartphone. Or,
right.
Or like, that's obviously, that's not the exact statistic, but that stuff like that exists where they've done studies, and what people are willing to give up instead of their smartphone is unbelievable.
It's insane. It's insane. But for clarification too, Tommy and I have both been smartphone free you've been smartphone free for almost a year now.
Since February, so almost a year.
And then I've been smartphone free for
a few months.
2 months. Mm-hmm. And you and I have gone through different phases of being smartphone free, but this is like the official cutoff. Anyway, but yes, social media convinces you that you need it. And whatever your excuse is, and there are people listening who are making excuses in their head right now, I can guarantee. Like, I won't know what's going on with my cousin if I don't have Facebook. It's like, okay, you should pick up the phone and freaking call your cousin. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's a trash excuse. Or, like, I can't keep up with my friends from elementary school. Do you have the bandwidth to keep up with your friends from elementary school? Or if you need it for work. That's the one that I do think has a little bit of leeway, because there are plenty of social media jobs out there where, like, your job is social media, and I get that. But have you approached your supervisor and asked if you can have a work phone and run accounts from a work phone, and you lock it in your desk at night? Like, does it have to be your accounts on your phone for your job? Like, I don't know. And so with all of these excuses, there's just this underlying thing of like, these platforms are convincing you that you need them in order to live, in order to live a full life. And that if you deleted them, you would lose a part of yourself. Yeah. And so, like, a lot of this is, what did you say? Addictive identity. Yeah. So the part of you is on social media, or you need it in order to live, is like exactly how addicts feel about the substances they consume. So whether that's alcohol or drugs or pornography, when you are actively addicted to something, a substance or a behavior, something in you feels, even though you may absolutely hate that substance or behavior, something in you feels like you will be lost without it.
Yeah.
It's really insane. It's like a hallmark of addiction. But like I remember when I was recovering or trying to recover, like I guess, this was really at the beginning of recovery. I'm like, who am I when I don't have pornography in my life? Like, is it ever possible to be Rachel without pornography in her life? And that's how it becomes with any substance or behavior. But social media encourages you to feel that way about it. And that really causes concern for me. But I think on top of that, or I guess further, I don't know. A hallmark of addiction too, this is Gerald May and Addiction and Grace. He says one of the main hallmarks of addiction is self-deception, which is pretty obvious. But the I can quit anytime I want, like, you know, people are like, I don't need my social media, I just really enjoy it. It's like, okay, well, it's keeping you addicted to porn. Like, give it up. They can't. Yeah. They can't. Like, or I don't know, just the the levels of deception of like the poop with a little bit of brownie in it, you know, like the like, I'm keeping this around for this reason. It's like nothing is worth being chained to pornography. Literally nothing. I can't think of one thing that is worth it to keep you addicted, right? So like having social media is not worth it. And even if it's to keep up with friends and family, even if it's for your job, even if it's for yada, 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 like you are addicted to pornography. Like there is no reason why you should keep using social media. Yeah. Like verbatim. Even if you just delete it until you're like well into your recovery, like you do have to really limit it at some point. But anyway, you had a point on the part of you is on social media, the addictive identity. Yeah, I'm sure you've referenced this before, but so I'm almost positive you've referenced this before. But there's a scene in The Great Divorce. It's allegorical tale of basically a man on his way from hell to heaven, basically, he's a ghost. And he's a ghost, and so it's very creative. But like, so again, it's not meant to be like this theologically accurate. C.S. Lewis says like in the book that if you decide to leave hell, like you have a chance to leave hell. Yeah. And if you leave hell, it becomes purgatory. Yes. So he doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't say so that's it's accurate. But it's incredibly imaginative and helps you like kind of understand some things on a deeper level, just from the beauty of. But anyway, without getting to that, there's a scene that's very famous where there's a man that has a red lizard on his shoulder, and he's on his way to heaven again, but he can't go further until he takes it off. And there's an angel trying to assist the man, and the angel sees him, and he says like, "Hey, I want to bring you closer to heaven, but let me take that red lizard off of you because that can't come with you." He just says, "May I kill it?" Yeah, and it's very symbolic. May I kill it? And it's this whole back and forth. And the man, what does he do? He talks about like denial, and he also talks about identity. So denial, where it's like, oh no, it's fine. He's been there my whole life. It's not a big deal. Yeah. It's not going to bother me. He's been, When the lizard is chattering into the ghost's ear. Yeah. Right. So like this ghost of a man has been in conversation with the lizard for his whole life, he says. And for Lewis, the lizard does represent lust. Yes. So that's like a very, very clear picture. But yeah, the angel keeps on asking, "May I kill it? May I kill it? May I kill it?" And the man does start with denial, saying like, "I've had him around my whole life. I'm used to him. Like he'll quiet down." Like so many different things, right? Or like, "I'll just keep it under control." And then eventually he starts saying like, "No, I will die if you kill it. Right. Like I will die." Yeah. And that's the identity part. Yes. Yeah. Like you'll kill me if you take this away. Right. So I think like there's certain things where even when you do acknowledge that perhaps it's got some negative effects or even like it's just all right. I've heard people say, "Oh, I hate social media," and then like, "Oh wow, okay, why don't you delete it?" Like, "Oh no," and then like immediately it's like this denial, and you're like, "Wow." But that's when addiction is very deep, like it feels a part of who you are, even if it's a dirty part. But it still feels like you. So even though it's dirty, it's still you. And so like you don't want to kill yourself. But of course, that's always a lie. Whenever you find yourself in that kind of situation, the truth is that that's not a true depiction of who you are. It's a false self. Yeah. And that's where you should kill the false self. But the goal in life is not to kill your identity, or so to speak, but it is to kill your false identities, so that you can become
more true to your true self, and thereby you're in a sense making space for your true self. So in any case, yeah, I've had this is an interesting thing for me with Facebook, because I got rid of social media with the exception of Facebook, and Facebook hung around, and I realized that of course there's a lot of discussions that we've had in this process, but what I realized for myself is what it came down to was just the fact that I felt like, I had photo collections on there from especially my trip to Italy in college for a whole semester, which is I really cherished, and it was a really beautiful time in my life. And I had a lot of other, photos that kind of were like landmarks, and Facebook intentionally, I think, it has a good way of showing you different memories or different moments in your life.
Yeah, and we'll bring them up.
But what it does though is it makes you feel like, okay, this is me. Like I'm if I delete this, I'm killing
my life.
These milestones, these moments, my life, these friends. And for me, a big thing was college. And so I graduated college, and so deleting Facebook felt like I'm cutting off my portal to keep in touch with my college friends. And you can't deny the fact that Facebook specifically does make it incredibly efficient to just I can just do a post, and most people that I'm friends with or suppose at college will see that, and so it's a very easy way to keep in touch, and so the efficiency of Facebook can't be denied. It's incredible. And so deleting it was what am I? I'm just effectively cutting off, or it felt like a severing. It just kind of felt wrong. But I realized that's exactly what they want you to feel like. They want you to feel like this is part of who I am, and I can't leave it, and I can't cut it off. I must stay. It's a lifeline somehow, or this is somehow a part of me. But it's no, and this is actually a point that my cousin made one time that I thought was compelling, even though I didn't agree with him when he first said it. But it's we have to remember these things are still a commodity. They're still a service from a private company that we choose to sign up for. And that's, without getting to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's still we can still choose to say no. But they have succeeded. The marketing department has won in making people convinced there is no other option. I must have Facebook. And when I have Facebook, then I cannot get rid of Facebook. And that is 100% a marketing victory, where they make you feel like you have no other choice. Who's forcing you to buy the Ford Explorer? You can buy a Chevy or something, or you can buy a whatever other brand of car. You have choice. The consumerism is not a bad thing per se, of course. We have options.
We have to consume. Yeah.
And of course, anyway, but so having choices isn't a bad thing, but it's amazing how somehow social media has won this victory of making you convinced that you must have this single platform and there's no other option. And and then even the fact that you have to have social media to begin with as a concept, social media is now needed to be human.
Yep.
And to have friends and to be connected and to know about things, and the world's increasingly being made in its image.
Oh my gosh. I know, words. I think as generations evolve with social media, more and more a presence in their lives earlier and earlier on, it will be more this way. But I know I experienced when I first deleted social media, I wasn't invited to anything. I didn't know about anything. And I think that was late high school when I first started getting rid of things. But yeah, I think as younger generations grow up with social media, that is their primary mode of communication. It's not texting. It's definitely not calls. They can't call each other for crap. But social media kind of dominates their social atmosphere and their social makeup, right? But I think it does for many, many young adults, millennials as well. But I think people fear losing their memories. People fear losing connection and friendship. And the fact of the matter is, if you lose somebody because you don't have social media, you didn't have them to begin with.
Yeah.
You did not have a connection with them to begin with. And we're not meant to be connected to over 1,000 people intimately.
You can't be.
This is literally impossible. Yeah. So
yeah,
the friends who wanted to include me did, and I just kind of had to learn. It's okay, wait, maybe it's not true that I'm not invited to anything. I'm invited to the things that I need to go to.
Yeah.
And that I actually would value, you know, but I don't have to be at everything.
And when you are invited, that was a phone call someone made or a
text message somebody sent.
Yeah, and not another button. It's like add, invite.
Yep.
You know, so like you were just another button on a screen.
It was intentional. Yeah. Number 4, social media makes you selfish. So this is also one that I could probably rant about if I am not careful. I
can start.
I can start. I can definitely start.
Right.
I'm not gonna get too angry. But
okay. All right.
No, I think this is really obvious. Like,
unfortunately,
I think it's obvious to people. But like, your social media accounts are about you. At the end of the day, it's not actually about keeping up with too many people, though you do that. Like, and I do think there are people that genuinely almost never post and keep up with people, and I think that's more admirable. Like, for sure. Still don't think you should have it, but like, especially if you're a porn addict. But I think there's something about that. But especially Instagram, there are certain platforms that are geared towards this, but especially Instagram it is
Ode to self.
Yeah. It is. I mean, one of my friends refers to it as the kingdom of self. That is like, like, I have pictures of me, of my life. It doesn't matter if it's me with friends or with family. Like, it's still just me. It's about me. Like, what did I do this week? What am I accomplishing? What great things are going on in my life? Look how happy I am. Me, right? And I think a lot of it goes along with like self-love culture, that somehow self-love like saves us from like sin and shame and all of these things. And it's you cannot, I think it's Allie Beth Stuckey who says this in her book on self-love, but like, you cannot be the source of the problem and the solution. Like, you cannot be a wretched sinner and also like love yourself out of being a wretched sinner. That's impossible. Like, you are the problem. You cannot be the solution. But like, social media breeds narcissism because it almost feels like you're trying to get yourself out of this state of being a wretched sinner, right?
Yeah.
Like, my life is great, I don't suffer. And even if you don't post about suffering, or if you do post about suffering, let's put it this way. If you do post about suffering, it's very flowery, poetic, like it's meant to be a performance. Like, and because if you actually authentically post about suffering, nobody wants to read it. Like, suffering, nobody really wants to be around it, right? Like, it's sacrificial to be around suffering. So if you actually post a picture of yourself suffering or write about it in a way that's not poetic and performative, people don't want to read it. They scroll past it. Yeah. So all it is at the end of the day is like, look how great I am. Look how great my life is. And I think this can get twisted too if people like want to put in, you know, a spin on it for the sake of evangelism, like, or evangelization, we'll put it that way. They want to put a spin on it for the sake of evangelization. They're like, look how great God is to me. And even that ends up being narcissist. Look how great God is to me. Like, that's not look how great God is.
Yeah.
That's look how great God is to me.
Through my life. See how I see God.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, social media inherently makes you selfish. You post for the sake of likes and comments. And I think people who post and say they don't post for likes or comments, like, are kind of lying to themselves. Yeah. Maybe that's too harsh, but
I think there's that recent tragedy of Brian Laundrie and I forgot her name.
Gabby.
I
can't remember.
Petito.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, it was like a couple who were like Instagram famous. I don't know. They were
YouTube vloggers too.
Yeah, not like insane, but like they definitely had like a pretty massive following and just were vlogging and Instagramming their journey across the United States, and then in a
converted van. Yeah.
In a converted van, and it was just like everything was picture perfect, and it all went south when Gabby went missing, and then Brian went missing, and then it turns out that Gabby may have been killed. They're not sure though. It's likely. And then Brian went missing, and then he found her dead, and they also ended up finding him dead. Yep. And so it looked like he was running for the cops. So the whole thing was just like a horrifying spectacle to watch on a national level. But like, what was interesting is that like it was a very stark reminder, like, wow, social media is not reality. Like everything, if you look on their accounts, everything was perfect, you know. But there's still a comfortability that we have about talking about social media as like, oh, we all know social media is kind of fake and it's filtered, you know, and that's a step in the right direction where we can. It's almost commonplace now for us to admit that social media is filtered, and filtered has become a buzzword for like fake or or wax poetic or these kinds of things, and not a true depiction of what's really going on. But what I don't think is yet comfortable, and we don't like to admit, is that social media is like a ode to self, or social media is a narcissistic tool, particularly Instagram. I think that people don't want to admit that. That one is harder to gulp. Yeah. And be like, whoa. And I'll say, like, this is actually the reason I deleted Instagram. Like, a couple of reasons. The first actually was that it was a portal for, I'm not going to say pornography per se, but definitely like just raunchy.
Just lust. Just opportunities
lust.
To
just
lust.
Like for as a guy, for me on Instagram, especially the discovery page, but you're always just like, click, click, click. Like you're always 2 or 3 clicks away from a page I shouldn't be on. It's that easy.
Yep.
You click on this random thing you see, you click on someone who's tagged in that photo, and then you click on that person's account, and then boom, you're in a place that you shouldn't be.
Right.
And so that was the first reason. That was kind of more like on a moral standpoint. I was like, yeah, this is just like, if I find myself in these bad moments, it's honestly usually from Instagram. And so that was the easy one. But the second one, which is harder in a sense to admit, but it was just very obvious. It's like, wow, like I just like looked at my Instagram account, and again, they're all individually, they're all just like moments I'm proud of, or fun moments, or cool moments. But ultimately, it was just an ode to self. It was just like a big thing, and of just like, look how cool I am, look how awesome my life is. Yep. And we recently just watched 2 films. One was What About Bob, which is hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
And another one is While You're Sleeping. But I noticed like both of those movies mock certain characters. And What About Bob, it mocks like the psychiatrist who has a bust of himself, and they're clearly depicting him as this narcissist who's very full of himself. No one would want to carry around a bust of themselves without being, like there's a sense of like shame that should come with that. Like, wow, are you really that full of yourself? You have a bust of yourself? And While You're Sleeping, Peter Callahan he's like one of the main guys in the beginning, but he, like she goes through his wall. It's a long story, but like the photos of himself, or in his apartment, he's got photos of himself, and it's like this clear way of the movie telling that he's very full of himself. But Instagram is the same thing. It's just that like we have photos of ourselves that we look at, and we want other people to look at. It's a self-portrait above our mantelpiece, of the arrogant, 18th century robber baron or something, but like it's the modern day version of ode to self. Look at me. And so maybe I'm being a little too harsh for now too, but like the point being though is that, especially Instagram and other forms, it's like, it's very easy to, just showcase your brand to the world. Yes. And it's not just the selfish aspect. It's also the manipulative control that we can exert, where it's like, I'm Tommy Killackey, and I'm a little bit of, adventure, so I throw in some hiking photos in there. I'm a little bit of, adventurous in cooking, so I got some cooking photos in there. Yep. I'm a little bit of whatever, famous, or a photo of me with a celebrity. Oh, I got some fun in there. I went to this cool concert.
I'm Catholic.
I'm Catholic. Yep. I would look at me at mass or whatever. You throw in all these things, and so they're individually purposed, but they also, you can scroll and say, aha, that's the mix. That's the mix I've created, and this is the percentage I've curated, and this is the type of person I want to present to the world.
And it's kind of in your subconscious too. Like that's not even always consciously done.
Yeah.
It's just like, but people, a lot of people do actually genuinely spend time evaluating their feeds and being like, what does my feed look like? Yada,
What's
yada,
my brand like?
Yeah.
That was something that was like
crazy.
Really, I was a marketing major, so this was kind of like the things we talked about, but like, it's just funny how people used to be still at least a sense of modesty or timidity of saying like your brand, but now it's like just, oh yeah, that's my brand. You're like, what? It's like, that's just how I filter things. I don't do, and just like, yeah. And I even knew my cousin, not him, but his friend, would literally like time his post for Instagram to post at a certain time of day that was optimized for the most likes.
Oh my gosh.
And then he would go back and review, okay, did I hit my quota of like 150 likes? Oh no, this one only got 130. Okay, I'm going to delete it.
Oh my
and
gosh.
He would delete it 24 hours later if it didn't get a right amount of likes. And so stuff like that sounds crazy, but people do it, and it's built for it. Like it's built to be this self-applause that, again, like it's worth noting. It's the desire to love yourself, the desire to feel affirmed, the desire to be known, the desire to know that you are alive in the world and people know you. is a very beautiful and good thing. But it's perverted on social media, where it instead becomes narcissism, selfishness, and self congratulatory like proclamations to the world, in a sense, that is not actually the kind of self-love that's authentic and true and good and life-giving.
I was going to say that too, that it's important that we recognize like the desire to feel loved and valued
is very
and
good.
seen and known is very good. It's like, it's reminding me of a quote from Prince Caspian, I think it is, where C.S. Lewis says, like, from the character of Aslan, to one of the humans, one of the Pevensies, he says, like, you are a son of Adam, and that is enough to both, you know, make you drop to your knees on the ground and to hold your head high, be content. And so, like, we're supposed to be seen and known and loved in our humanity, in the fact that we're wretched, poor sinners who have been redeemed by Christ, you know? And so, like, that's, like, just being human is enough to both help us, you know, like, hold our heads high, but also make us bow low to the ground because we are wretched, poor sinners. So we're supposed to just be content, just be human, right? But I think, yeah, the fact that social media breeds selfishness, how that feeds addiction, because I don't think we've, like, connected that super well yet, is that lust is inherently selfish. And Thomas Aquinas defines that in his Summa about lust, but, like, lust is an inordinate amount of, like, self-pleasure or enjoyment of pleasure, right? And pleasure is meant to feel good. Like, it's meant to be something that, you know, I'll let you cough. How do I want to put this? Pleasure is a good because it is in a way an affirmation of life. It's an affirmation that life is good, that you are made for good things. Like, pleasure is a good. But an inordinate amount of pleasure or an inordinate entitlement to pleasure is selfish. Of, like, if I feel or believe, even just by action and not necessarily what I believe in my mind and heart, that I am always entitled to pleasure at somebody else's expense, like through the objectification of other people, which is what pornography and masturbation does, even if you're objectifying yourself. Like, yeah, that's where the sin is. So I think that's where, like, social media's breeding of selfishness connects to the selfishness that's inherent to lust. So the more selfish we become in other areas, the more easy it is for us to lust when the opportunity arises. But
you fall in the small ways, you fall in the big ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Point number 5, or do we feel like that one was covered?
Yeah, I mean, I think we made the point of just that. So there's the reason social media, I think, has been so huge in humanity. Like, it's like literally a third of humans. No, I think half of humans have some form of social media right now, which is insane. Like, half of planet Earth is using some form of social media. But there's a reason for that. And so, like, the human heart does not change. And so there are deep-seated desires that we have that are good, but they are perverted. And so, like, it's important to note that this is not
they're perverted by social media.
And, yes, and other things.
Okay.
But
they're
just
not
that,
perverted in themselves.
Yeah, that, like, you know, we never seek things because we know it's bad for us. We seek things because there is some good that we're trying to attain.
Yes.
And that includes pornography. Like, I want to feel affirmed. I want to feel loved. I want to feel turned, whatever. Like there's something good that we're seeking, but then it's then twisted and perverted. And so for social media, I guess on this point of just, it's good to feel known and feel loved and feel connected, but social media twists that, maybe not very far, but still twists it, where, you know, self-love becomes self-idolatry, connection becomes talking at each other, and these sorts of things. And anyway,
we'll get into that with point number 5 too. I think a final connection I'd make between the selfishness and lust and the selfishness and social media is just that I think one of the most heartbreaking things that comes as a result of addiction to pornography is just the loss of recognition of the value of other people, the objectification of others, whether men or women, or yourself. But yeah, I think social media is geared to make you desire to be more important than other people.
Yeah.
Like, I desire to be more seen than others. Like, I desire more likes. I desire more comments.
Yeah.
Like, how I present my life matters more than the lives of other people. Which is just it's not the Christian call at all.
Or how I present my life matters more than how my life should be, like, or the truth reflecting how my life is presented, you know?
Yeah. Or even more deeply, like, if we're talking about influencers, like, or, I'm not going to blanket all influencers with this at all, but yeah, if you're talking about influencers or people who are trying to evangelize through social media, sometimes it becomes like my life matters to other people's spiritual development.
Yeah.
Like, who I am, like, matter. I am an example to other people. I am a witness. Follow me. Like,
yeah,
that's really selfish at the end of the day. Like, I really admire, I think, Matt Fradd says this regularly on Pints with Aquinas. He's like, your life would be better if you deleted all social media off of your phone and stopped watching Pints with Aquinas and went out and read a book. Yeah. Right? Like, but I think that's real leadership there. He does not think that people's moral and spiritual development is dependent on Pints with Aquinas. He's happy to be a resource, but, like, I think social media and influencer culture that comes out of it often, and again, I don't want to blanket all influencers with this, but I think that, it creates this feeling of, like, people are dependent on what I say and what my life looks like and the example I set. Like, people are dependent on that. That is that's really selfish, that you think the world at large or the audience you have or the followers you have depend on you to speak truth into their lives. Like, no, they depend on Jesus Christ. They depend on the Holy Spirit and whatever avenue he takes. He doesn't need you. Like, that's John Newman's, like, I have a place in God's counsels, like, that whole quote that he does. But there's one part of this amazing quote by St. John Henry Newman where he says, he was like, basically, like, God can dispose of me at any points he wants, like, or any point he wants. Like, if I am not up to the task, he can assign another person to my task, just as he can turn a stone into the sons of Abraham. Right. So, like, for instance, with Magdala, like, I could be tossed out of this at any moment by God for whatever reason. I could die. I could, I don't know, be embroiled in sin and scandal. Who knows, right? But, like, we can be tossed out of the fight for just or unjust reasons at any point in time. And I have to believe that people's well-being, their spirituality, their recovery has actually nothing to do with me at the end of the day. It has to do with Jesus Christ, right? But social media, even from an evangelical standpoint, takes the stance of, like, I am necessary. Right. And when you believe you're necessary to a movement is when you should leave.
Yeah. And because that's you're playing God, or you're exerting power further than it should, and so, like, even like this podcast, like right now we are talking about social media, and of course it is our hope and it would be our joy if this podcast served as a spark of conversations for people, Sure. But that's only the ultimate purpose, is that, like, we can just keep talking about it and ultimately have our own conversion and convictions. Yes. It's not, the goal of this podcast shouldn't be like, oh wow, like, Rachel and Tommy were so smart and let's go share this podcast far and wide. And oh my gosh. And the conclusion at the end of the day is not we should delete our social media or we should really think twice about social media in general, but is like, wow, Rachel and Tommy made some awesome points. Like, and I think that's worth saying, that, like, a lot of people, they say certain things, they post certain things, and the real intent behind whatever post or thing is something other than what's presented. Yes. So, this like, God willing, and I hope this is, that the purpose of this podcast is just to spark conversation and talk about social media. And of course, I hope it spreads far and wide so that the purpose goes further, or more people talk about it. But ultimately, the point is to spark conversations and spur convictions. But I think it's easy to, like, we're talking about, like, influencers, where it's like they say the purpose is conversion of heart and these sorts of things, but is it really just that, wow, so-and-so is, like, so wise, or so-and-so is really like, or my spirituality or my life has been changed because of this person, and I even depend upon that person. And something there is really, a whistle should be blown if that's the step that's being taken. And I think we talked about this before, but there's cancel culture on social media where you cancel someone. There's also like the opposite of it where you just idolize certain people on social media too, where nothing they do can be wrong. And then other people, they say the slightest thing and then they're canceled and they're gone.
Right.
And so there's both idolatry as well as canceling. And both are toxic to our humanity and to what it means to be human and so forth. So
wasn't it Fulton Sheen who said towards the end of his, it was Fulton Sheen, where he said like, my deepest fear is that I have led people towards me instead of Christ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think it's even like for Fulton Sheen or for somebody posting on Instagram or for this podcast or something, it's not even like Fulton Sheen said something great or this person posted something great or Rachel and Tommy made great points on this podcast episode. It's like, that was something true. Like we should just be completely taken out of it.
Yeah.
That was something true. Like my heart is responding to something true that I just read or listened to or saw. Like that was something true, good, or beautiful. Like that's what lasts. It's not about so-and-so said something.
Yeah.
And that's, anyway, I think
the messenger should not become the message. Yes,
exactly. So I think there's even selfishness when a lot of, again, I really don't want to target everybody with this, but I think there's oftentimes even behind well-intentioned social media accounts is still selfish. And that's the point we're trying to make. But okay, number 5. Number 5, breathe. Okay. Number 5. Social media destroys the sacred. Social media destroys the sacred. So this relates a little bit to number 2. The social media numbs you. But you kind of put it simply when we were making our outline. But you said what porn does to love, or what porn does to sexuality, right? Or sexual intimacy between married people, social media does to connection. Yeah. Or does to friendship. Yeah. So elaborate on that a little bit. I have thoughts, but I will add.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Can I give a quick disclaimer before we do this?
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I asked you to elaborate, and then I'm interrupting you already. I do want to say, for those listening, that we're not saying that social media is mortal sin. Like, pornography is a mortal sin in the eyes of the church, right? Right. So porn's destruction of sexual intimacy and consuming porn is mortally sinful. We're not saying that using social media is sinful. Like, the church has said no such thing, so we can say no such thing. But I just kind of wanted to clarify that when we're making this comparison. I think that's important, is that people don't feel like they're committing the same sin by using social media as they are when they're watching pornography. Anyway, that's all I got. Yeah.
I think so. In terms of that comparison, which seems really stark, but I think it's true and fair. But it's that I guess so. Take pornography. Like, pornography sells the lie that love and connection can be found by watching a video or reading a novel or other means of pornography. But like, we all know that's a lie. Like, true love is something that words cannot convey. And something that, in some sense, like, there's like all kinds of romance novels and poems and songs, but like, even like love at first sight is kind of a farce. Like, there's love, like the truest, I think, symbol of love is like the old couple at a park bench who look in each other's eyes and they are saying 10,000 words just with a gaze. And that in some sense love can take a lifetime to build, and it's never fully built, and yet like you're tapping into something that's mysterious, and mystery in the sense not as like a whodunit where you don't know and then it's not solved, but mystery in the sense that's insatiable, it's inexhaustible, it's a fountain that ever flows, and it's so enormous, and that G.K. Chesterton was the one who said that the logician is the one who wants to cram the heavens into his head, but it's the poet who wants to take his head and put it into the heavens, and just kind of dwell in the heavens, not trying to reduce the heavens. So basically, pornography it commercializes eros, it commercializes love, and it's a lie. We all know it's a lie. Like, no one really believes they're finding true love online. They know it's a lie, but it works, and by work I mean it sells, because our desire for true love is so deep that sometimes we go to many different means to find it and to at least taste what feels like close to it, even though we know it's not the real thing. And so in the same sense, our human heart deeply desires communion with friends, with family, with just that we're known, that we're loved, that we know other people, and that there's a true sense of communion and unity.
Yeah.
And unity. And social media basically commercializes the cosmic. It sells friendship. It sells connection. It sells. It's like, oh, create an account, add your friends, boom, lickety split, whatever. Like, and it's like done. It's like, no, like a real friend takes so long, and conversations late nights, like losing track of time and favors and hardships and listening in their woes and also celebrating their victories. Like a true friend that you can depend on and know is not someone you click on, is not someone you can
just
add
view pictures of
and view pictures of and be updated by. And maybe some of you can relate, but there's moments where you can, be in the company of someone and that's sometimes just being in the presence of someone is enough. But there's also other times when you're, around someone, you hang out, but you never actually really talk and really connect. And that's also frustrating because your hearts want to mingle in a sense, whether this is like a friendship or it's something of romance. But I think social media sells a lie where it's like everything is controllable, everything is within your grasp, and then you control everything. Mm-hmm. But the line that I heard one time that I'll forever have in my head, but it says like intimacy and control cannot occupy the same space. They can't coexist. You can't control something and at the same time be intimate with it, And so if you're controlling your friendships, if you're following or unfollowing, liking or unliking, subscribing or unsubscribing, whatever, like adding friends or deleting friends or blocking friends, like that is not friendship. And we all know it. And so Facebook is selling a lie where they're taking that good desire. We talked about this before of there's a really deep desire. There's a reason why Facebook is a global phenomenon on such a scale. It's because the human heart longs for friendship and connection and communion. And that's a beautiful, good thing. But then they sell it. They take it and then they sell it as if Facebook has the answer. You need Facebook to have these connections. That's such a lie. Friendship has been one of the oldest institutions known to man. And Facebook did not solve that problem. They innovated certain things for sure, but ultimately the innovation was a lie where you think you have more friends, you think you have more connections, but how do you explain the rise in suicide rates, the incredible increase in anxiety, and the incredible increase in people's sense of loneliness or the lack of trust in their friends? Like, oh, I'm invited to this party, but I don't know if they're going to uninvite me, or my friends are coming, but who knows if they're going to find a better party. These are the sorts of things that the modern dilemma is so acutely painful. And I think commercializing things, like making things into commodities, but you can't make a commodity out of friendship. You can't make a commodity out of love, no matter what you say pornography. You can't get a commodity out of sacrifice or these sorts of things. And when you commodize, so to speak, certain things that are sacred, it's not like you've found this incredible innovation. Rather, you've just desecrated something.
Yeah. Many thoughts. Yeah, I think it teaches you, like social media, like it trains you to be selfish, or it trains you to be numb. It trains you to be in control. And pornography, many people, like one of the number one reasons people watch pornography is to be in control of sexual experiences, especially victims of abuse. Like if a victim of abuse finds themselves like viewing pornography, it's because they're desperately trying to be in control of a place where they have felt so out of control.
Right.
Like they're trying to heal a wound through power, basically.
Yeah.
Or there's some interesting statistics too of like men attribute feeling affirmed and feeling powerful to watching pornography. Like that's how they feel during, or if they're proud of that habit, like they feel powerful. Like sex or sexual experiences make them feel powerful. Pornography makes them feel powerful. Obviously that's in like kind of a perverted sense, when like real sexual intimacy between spouses like should make a man feel like strong and affirmed, but it shouldn't make him feel like in power. Like I think that's that's a little demented. But for women, it makes them feel powerful in the sense of like they feel a certain power over men, of like I can like
manipulate,
I can dominate, so I think both genders experience this desire for control. And not just victims of abuse, though. Like there's a much more understandable reason why victims of abuse seek control. Again, is to like that control that those unwanted experiences. But I think you and I were talking about this morning, and kind of to add on to what you were saying. Yeah, social media destroys the sacred or profanes the sacred because nothing is sacred like anymore. Like sacred means mysterious. It means like to be hidden, right? Like it means like that you're meant to keep it, I don't want to say keep it private, but like it's meant to be discovered or honored or revered, right?
Well, you only veil things that are sacred.
Yes.
So what are things that are veiled? Like the tabernacle in Catholic churches that holds the Eucharist. Women, like brides.
Mm-hmm.
You veil, like sacred things are veiled to symbolize the fact that there's something sacred there that should not be tampered with.
Yes. And I think nothing is veiled on social media, to put it simply. Like all of my moments can belong to social media. Like I can put everything out there. Like I have been shocked, like absolutely shocked at the level of exposure people like will go to on social media. And I'm not talking about like physical exposure, though sometimes like that's the case too. Like how do you want to put that much of your body out there? I don't know. Like and that's not a comment against somebody's body. That's more like your body's sacred. You should probably not post that picture. But I think even like exposure of emotions or spirituality or relationships, I think there is such a profaning of relationships and marriage on social media, including in the Catholic world.
Yeah.
Like people absolutely market their relationships. It drives me crazy. Like there are conversations and things and struggles and decisions that nobody else should ever know about.
Yeah.
Except the two of you, and maybe like close friends or family members that you want to share with. But stuff like the NFP conversations that Catholic women will have or like post about on social media. And I'm going to speak specifically to female vices here. Like that should not be a public conversation. Like it shouldn't be. I think we can talk about the concept of natural family planning and being open to life without constantly being like, this is what I'm doing right now. Like you're exposing a very private, sacred decision of what you and your spouse are doing with your fertility. Like that's like a very, very sacred decision. So it's really frightening to me that people don't bat an eye when that's put out there. And I think in making this point, like, I don't know, like I put the fact that I had a pornography addiction out there, but like, I think I've had to evaluate like in my own heart and mind, like, am I being any different? Like, am I profaning something sacred? And it's like, I don't think the fact that I had a porn addiction is sacred, first of all.
Perhaps the struggle was sacred, though. Like the struggle in your relationship with God in the process.
And there are things that I will never, ever share publicly. There are parts of that story that will always remain mine. And I don't owe it to the public, But exposure of sin and suffering, kind of relating back to the point of like social media makes life seem perfect, but the exposure of sin and suffering is to set other people free, right? But the exposure of like, these are all these wonderful decisions I'm making, or look at me doing the Catholic life. Like that's not for the sake of other people. And it's just, you're taking something beautiful and holy and good and you are marketing it. Like you are making it a marketplace. And I thought maybe I'm like not making any sense and I'm getting too ranty, but I thought we could read the Guardini quote that we talked about earlier, because I think this makes it make a ton of sense. But so this is from Letters from Lake Como by Romano Guardini. So it's called Explorations in Technology and the Human Race. So it's mostly just about technology's growing presence in the world. It's absolute cash money. Highly recommend. But
it's, written a while ago. It's written in the 1920s.
Yeah, which is insane because the insights in it are
prophetic.
like
Yeah.
So,
but the author is basically coming to grips with the modern world and what
yes.
it's doing to change the world very rapidly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. He says, okay, nothing commands respect and nothing is inviolable. We lay hands on everything. All philosophical problems, all art, all historical events, all personalities, even down to the last hidden thing in recollection, letter, or confession. All are up for grabs. How sickening it is. How vulgar life has become in every sphere, even in religion, for despite the profound equality of the children of God and the fact that all things are theirs, they are unable to prevent the surrender of all arcana and the eruption of clamor and bustle into the quietness that alone is essentially creative. How we long for an arcane discipline that will protect what is sacred from the marketplace, including the marketplace within. So what he's saying there is that, like, with the development of technology, and obviously social media wasn't even kind of a concept when this book came about, with the development of technology and the exposure of ourselves through it, the exposure of human nature, like, nothing becomes untouchable. So, like, again, I'm going to use NFP as an example because I think it's a very common one in the Catholic female world. Like, 50 years ago, talking about sex and birth control and when you were having children, like, that was rude. Like, that was considered very socially rude to talk about things like that. Like, or like how the question, like, are you pregnant? Like, that's a rude question, right? Like, that
still is.
Yeah, it is inherently rude. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's an inherently rude question.
You don't ask a woman if she's pregnant or or a man what a salary is. Yeah, that's a question.
Yeah, but ask. But the NFP conversation, like, allows for questions like that.
Yeah.
Like, it makes them not rude. Yeah. It numbs you to those kind of questions of, like, you've been married for a year. Why aren't you pregnant yet? Or, like, people just absolutely pontificating, like, very, very, again, private situations and decisions. So I think I'm just using that as an example, but, like, if even, like, our sexuality and, very private decisions within marriage, but, like, I mean, even more than that, if our spiritual insights, if our fruits from prayer are not protected from exposure through social media, then, like, what is? Like, if I pray, if I'm, receiving something intimate from the Lord, like, that is the most intimate relationship we are supposed to have walking this earth, like, is with Jesus. So if I'm receiving something intimate in prayer and I post it, like, what does that say about what I received? Like, is it actually sacred at all if it's not kept to myself? And I think there are fruits that we receive from prayer that we are meant to share, and we're supposed to discern those, like, very, very heavily. But, like, I think that's one of, the most tragic things about social media is, like, people just posting, like, spiritual insights and fruits from prayer. Like, this is what the Lord and I are talking about. It's like, why are you posting that? Yeah. Like, what good is that?
I think in a lot of ways, this conversation about social media is a discussion of pornography on a lesser degree, but still has the same flavor. And so, like, we all know the obvious fact that our bodies are sacred. And, like, of course, the female body is the pinnacle of creation. And so it should be veiled, like we clothe, and clothe hopefully well, where it's not too revealing. And that, but there's also an incredible beauty for married couples to give to each other. And there's an unveiling that's appropriate because of the bond. Like, what you say physically is congruent with what you said, like, verbally in your covenant, in your vow. Like, I give everything to you. Mm-hmm. And so when that's not the case, when you're not married, or there's other, or you're just viewing pornography, it's profane. That the sacred is desecrated, is desacred. It is taken. It is reduced. It is. It's profaned. It's. And so, like, pornography is desecrating the sacred. It is something that's sacred, like sexuality. But also just nakedness, and it's making it a commodity, and it's a heinous crime. But there's a desire for the beautiful, the true, the good, and so we view it like some people view it because of that desire, obviously. Yeah. But I think so. But the same point, maybe on a lesser level, but still in the same way, it applies to social media, where sacred things are just thrown out there, are thrown into the void, so to speak, are projected, are are proclaimed. And we now have this culture even where it's like they say silence is violence, and there's almost a pressure to say things like something happened, like I got to speak up, I got to say something, like my opinion must be voiced, otherwise I am passively violent, and there's something to be said about actual passivity, but I think there's a lot of toxicity in this understanding of like, oh my gosh, I must contribute to this conversation, and it ends up being this chorus of barking, this chorus of everyone talking at each other and projecting their asserting, but ultimately it's a lot of times things that do not belong on social media end up there, because we just think like the more our identity lumps up in social media, the more like if it's not on social media, that part of me is not real.
Is it really there?
Yeah, and that's when it becomes really dangerous. And I think so lots more to say there, I suppose, but like I guess that's what it seems to me is like the connection is that like the obvious things that pornography does that is bad, where it's desecrating the sacred. Social media in a lesser degree, but in the same way, is doing to conversation. It's doing to friendship. It's doing to marriage. To
relationships and marriage, yeah.
And it's also doing to like storytelling and sharing in general. Like think about Snapchat. Like it used to be, you would not believe what happened to me today. Guess what? It has now become, did you see my Snapchat story? Like I've seen this over and over again. They're like, what happened? They're like, check it out. And they don't even bother to say what happened. They just check it out. Look at my story.
Gosh, yeah.
And you see, and I've talked about this, like, I guess I've just noticed this before. It's like, you see a cute squirrel, and that's supposed to be a thing that delights you, and it makes you smile, and it's funny, and he does something funny or whatever, but then that immediately becomes fodder or material for your story. That immediately becomes something you can take. This cute squirrel that I'm seeing do this cute thing immediately becomes a piece of content that I can use for my story. And then I can tell my friends, go check out my story because look at this cute squirrel that I saw. And then ultimately the squirrel gets, this is a random example, but like with a cute moment, a cute baby, a crazy thing you saw on the road, like fill in the blank of any kind of event that makes your life interesting or was strange or bizarre or cool or funny or beautiful or sad, whatever, anything. And all of them end up becoming content. And all of them end up becoming kindling for the same fire. Like, oh, throw it into social media, throw it in. As opposed to those things individually being what those things are.
Yes. Like
that is a sad moment, and I want to share with my friend because it's hurting me. That is a cute and funny thing that I want to share with my other friend because they'll appreciate that. That is this kind of thing, or that is that kind of thing. But it all ends up being the same kind of thing. It all becomes just content that can support whatever story, whether it's an Instagram post or a Snapchat bite or a TikTok video or a Facebook post. It all ends up becoming this monotonized, synthesized thing. And it kind of blends life together into the same batch of brown. Because when you mix all colors together, it becomes brown. That's like why. Poop. Like poop.
Like poop in the brownie. Okay, but it reminds me of Mark Barnes, the ClickFix article in First Things, which was fabulous, but where he said, like, I must take a picture of this thing, or I must video this, or, record this thing, because I must affect this thing because it is not affecting me. Yeah. Right? Like, the beautiful painting at a museum or the concert where we record the musician instead of just listening, right? Like, I think that's the feeling behind, if I don't post this, it's not real, or like, but I think people do feel that way sometimes. And again, I'm even in the Catholic world, in the Catholic influencer world, this can happen where like, this milestone in my relationship or this milestone in my marriage, the spiritual insight I've gained, it does not happen unless I post about it and unless other people know. Right. When it's like, that is not allowing like truth, beauty, and goodness to affect you, because allowing truth, beauty, and goodness to affect you means sitting in awkwardness, silence, desolation, consolation, joy, pain, like so many different experiences. It cannot be immediate, right? And like, it's also not like immediately gratifying almost ever. So I think that's, I think that is the chief way that social media profanes the sacred. It's, number one, I'm putting things out there that are sacred. Number two, like I must have an effect on my life. Like I must have control. I must have, all of this because my life is not affecting me enough. Like I must put things out there because like nothing's actually reaching me unless I do. And I don't think that's a concept we can necessarily like hammer. Like you can't like, I don't know. You can't summarize that in a few words, but people know what we're talking about, I think. Like something doesn't become real until I post it, or the spiritual insight I've gained isn't real until I've posted it, or, you know, this milestone I've reached, like, you know, isn't real until I posted it. Like, do you remember how many people didn't even know we were dating when we got engaged because we never posted it?
Yeah.
Like, there were people who were like, I didn't even know you had a boyfriend.
I mean, I was just telling some people from my college who have no idea I'm married.
Yeah, same. Yeah, but it's like people have no clue. And I remember getting our wedding photos back and thinking something. For a brief second, I was like, well, what are these for? Like, what are these for if I'm not going to post them anywhere? And it's like, they're your damn wedding photos. They're for you. Like, what the heck? Like, they're so we can put them in an album and show them to our children and grandchildren. Like, they're our wedding photos. They're commemorative. Yeah. They're like, they're a way to, like, yeah, commemorate and honor the most beautiful day of our lives, right? Like, that's, I don't have to post that in order for that to become real. Like, I need to sit with that. I need to sit with the emotions or lack of emotion that looking at our wedding photos evokes. Anyway, that's my greatest illustration I got of that.
That's good.
Thank you. We should probably wind down.
Yeah, we've been talking a while.
For a while. Do you have any concluding thoughts before we wind down?
See, I had it and then it went away again.
I'm getting tired too, getting sleepy.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah. I guess just this is just like a more general comment, I suppose. But it is helpful. It's easy for us. Like, we talked about the internet briefly about, you know, you're supposed to open your computer and have a purpose. You know, open up your web browser, and because idleness is the devil's workshop.
Yeah.
So have a purpose and know what you're doing. But like it's easy to, sometimes it's so obvious, but like it needs to be resaid and reminded. But like, just ask, what is the purpose of certain things? You know, like what is this thing that I'm using, and what is the purpose I'm trying to achieve? And I think social media is one of those things where it's easy to slip into it because it's just what you do and everyone has it, or it's easy to download it and then create an account, whatever.
Right.
But then you get so sucked into it that you suddenly forget, like, what was the original purpose? And so, again, back to the comment about Facebook, in a sense, selling friendship, or other social media selling different types of things that are cosmic and can't be sold. Like, ask yourself, what is it that I'm seeking? Like, Facebook, as an example, purports to give you connection. It purports to give you friendship. It purports to give you, you know, meaningful moments and all these different things, right? But particularly just connection and friendship. So ask the obvious question, does it? Ask the question, are my friendships better because of Facebook? Think about the most beautiful moments you've had with your friends, the most beautiful moments you've had with your loved ones, your family, or that kind of thing. You know, were they on Facebook or were they in person? Like in the you know, you're posting things on social media that are the beautiful moments of your life, not being on social media itself. It's supposed to be a means. And so then ask, like, the next obvious question, which is like, okay, is this necessary, or is it in fact actually hindering? And I think that's the kicker, where it's like, if you had a moment of prayer, for instance, or an incredibly sacred thing that was so impactful, that touched the depths of your hearts, would you want to tell to every single one of your friends, or would you rather just tell the friends that you know would really understand it and receive it?
Yeah. And
the chances are it's probably the latter. And likewise, think of like the most, I don't know, even just like the friendships that developed. Like, maybe you found friends on Facebook, but like, did you become friends, like true friends on Facebook, or no? And so I think the more we attain the things that our hearts are actually after, the more like indifferent we'll rightfully become to these things that are supposedly the only key to make us attain those, whether it's friendship or this true love, if you're, you know, or I'm not going to say that if you find true love, all of a sudden you never have a temptation again. That's obviously false. But,
right.
You know, but that the concept applies, though, where when we find the things that we're actually after, the false.
It makes it easier to say no to the counterfeit.
Yeah, you see the counterfeit more easily, and you also are more easily able to say no to the counterfeit as well.
Well, and that's the whole, say, ethos behind our recovery small groups is women when they find connection with each other, it makes it easier to say no.
Right.
Like, it's not even romantic connection makes it easier to say no to pornography. It's just love in general, like finding the love of God, finding love from other women, sometimes across the world, who are fighting the same battle as you. But I think that's the ethos of recovering from addiction in general, is like, just finding what you were actually looking for the whole time, and slowly letting go of the other things that get in the way of the true thing. But okay, well, we're gonna land this plane. I'm not totally sure how, because my brain still feels really full.
I think we landed it.
I think we did, but
we landed it.
Yeah, I think as a final note, I will say, specifically to those listening who are actively addicted, I cannot stress enough, like, delete your social media today. I mean, I can't find, I still have not heard a good reason why you should keep it. But if you're not actively addicted, I think especially this episode, like, hopefully will serve as just food for thought. Like, consider your relationship with social media. And are you actively addicted to other things because of it? Like, comparison or narcissism or selfishness or lust, even if it's not pornography. But, I think my advice remains for those actively addicted: delete social media today. One of my dear friends and one of Magdala's associate directors, Mary Jo Carney, who's been on the podcast a few times, she sent us a book for Christmas called
10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now by Jaron Lanier. Can I read the arguments?
Yeah, read the arguments. That's the conclusion. This book looks amazing. We've only read
we cracked it open a little bit. I'm super excited to read it. Okay, argument 1. You are losing your free will. Argument 2. Quitting social media is the most finely targeted way to resist the insanity of our times. Argument 3. Social media is making you into an asshole. Argument 4. Social media is undermining truth. Argument 5. Social media is making making what you say meaningless. Yep. Argument 6. Social media is destroying your capacity for empathy. Like fact 2. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway. Argument 7. Social media is making you unhappy. Argument 8. Social media doesn't want you to have economic dignity. Argument 9. Social media is making politics impossible. Argument 10. Social media hates your soul.
Yep. Whew. This guy too, he was in the...
Jaron Lanier.
He was in... Jaron Lanier. You said that very, announcer.
Yeah.
He was in the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, which is...
He's a dude with the dreads. He's cool.
We highly recommend. But yeah, I think closing resources, if you want further reading in far better words than what we've said, definitely pick up Jaron's book, because already it looks like it just slaps from what we've read. And then
holla dollar bills, as the kids say.
Holla dollar bills, cash money.
Yeah.
Dope. I don't know. Anyway, but also watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix if you're looking for further resources as well. Okay, well, I think that's all we got. I think that's it. Tune in. Tune in a couple weeks for the next episode of the Magdala podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you liked this episode, feel free to subscribe, and share with somebody who you think might enjoy it. Give us a rating if you're on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out. And if you'd like to support our mission, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. You'll have access to exclusive content. We have different membership levels. But yeah, we have a really cool community building over on Patreon. And we also are approving our nonprofit paperwork to accept one-time donations. So that should be coming soon if you want to be a supporter through that as well. If nothing else, please pray for us and what we're doing over at Magdala. But with all that being said, we will catch you on the flippity flip. God bless. Thanks for joining the conversation today on the Magdala podcast. If you want to learn more, join a support group with other women on the journey, or find more content, visit magdalaministries.org. If you want to continue to be a part of the conversation, subscribe, and share this podcast. But most importantly, wherever you are in the journey of healing, know that you're not alone and you don't have to hide anymore. We're excited to welcome you to the table next time. God bless.